Hello all, and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Today we are finishing off the last of the Gerudo Desert, also known as the Desert Wasteland, on the southeastern section of Hyrule. And there are some games that I will admit that I roast absolutely horribly. I spend a lot of time complaining and mentioning little nitpicks and flaws with how the game actually functions, with how it works, how the different biomes are developed, and how they, in grand scheme, manage to encapsulate the idea, the love of gaming, as well as an realistic setting. And I think Breath of the Wild is one that I am very harsh on. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that it's a bad game, quite the opposite. I'm saying it is fantastic. But there's one region in this game that I always dreaded going to, and I'm gonna be honest, it's not the desert. Now, most people would say, wait, what? It's not the desert location? So what is it? For me, it's admittedly Death Mountain, but the thing is that through Breath of the Wild, the major locales are split into, shall we say, segments. There is the more open grassy field of central Hyrule. There's the mountainous terrain on the northern end of Hyrule, which is the Death Mountain. You have the Lanayru Mountains. You have the Hebra Mountains. A lot of mountains. The southern and eastern coastlines, as well as the most dry and arid region of Hyrule, the Desert Wasteland. Now, to get into this, I kind of need to describe a little bit of how different games approach the desert. And most of them are very unfavorable in terms of the way that they talk about or look at what a desert could potentially be. Now, the easiest way to describe this, I'm going to look at Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time had the Gerudo Valley and the extension of the Desert Wasteland and the Desert Colossus as its Hyrule variant of a desert area in gaming around the age of 3D gaming. And to be clear, it was done rather well. It made you feel the vastness of the desert, the idea of how you could easily get lost and really have no idea where you were going for vast periods of time. It made me, on many occasions, question where I was going, whether I was in the right place, or simply whether I would be able to get put back on the right track. And I believe that this was the intent. You as an individual new to the desert couldn't navigate it properly on your own. You had to get a guide in the form of a spectral entity to guide you from one end of the desert to the other to get to the Desert Colossus. This in and of itself is an amazing characterization or localization, words, of how these worlds and how this world reacts to the desert. Look at Twilight Princess. Now, Twilight Princess is typically the game that I give near unanimous praise to. Generally, I treat it the way that a lot of people talk about Ocarina of Time. But the desert portion of Twilight Princess is far and away one of the weakest regions in all of Hyrule, where there is some form of cinematic storytelling or more to it than just go from A to B. The trip to the Arbiter's grounds ends up being not much of an issue. It ends up being a trip that most people will set and forget. When they get to the Arbiter's grounds, they will not turn around or check out the different locations around the world, and this is intentional to a degree. but it means that the vastness of the desert, despite the fact that it is literally the size of a province of Hyrule, most people will only take a small sliver of that path across Hyrule in order to get from point A to point B. This can be seen as a positive or a negative, depending on how you look at it. But getting into Breath of the Wild and its approach to the desert, I personally think its approach goes significantly better than most other Zeldas ever come close to doing. So, to iterate my point, Breath of the Wild has one of the largest regions in all of Hyrule dedicated exclusively to a desert. And on the surface, this would seem like a silly idea. This is a vast world. What do you mean we're going to dedicate about a sixth of it to just wasteland, effectively? And at first it made no sense to me. But the more I dig into it, the more sense it kind of makes. First and foremost, the Gerudo Desert has always been a very vast location. And they did it in a way that does the Gerudo Desert justice. To kind of point at it and say, haha, this is what they were doing. Imagine for a moment that we made the Gerudo Desert any smaller. That it was a more secluded location within Hyrule. Most people would go through once and forget it. It would be a non-factor, a non-issue. But the fact that they took enough time to not only flesh out a minimum of 3 major locations within it, the primary Yiga side quest that has to do with Riju wanting the Thunder Helm back, but also tying in one of the colossal skeletons, the Arbiter's Grounds, which is briefly mentioned as a location, and on top of everything else, probably one of the most consistent series of external shrine quests in the entire game, with one requiring you to complete what is effectively a fetch quest to get somebody to go back to their home, or go back to Gerudo Valley or Gerudo Town in order to get themselves a cold drink. Whether it is fighting off a Molduga to light a bunch of torches, simply so that you are able to walk into the shrine itself. Completing the 7 sages puzzle on the edge of the Gerudo Desert, or even completing the Zonai Labyrinth. Each of these locations and location-based shrine quests all end up with it focusing more on characterization, on building more of an understanding of the Gerudo people. Now, I like this. I like it a lot, actually. Because, to me, that makes the single most sense out of anything you could do. If you were to take any area in any game whatsoever and devote a period of time, a significant portion of it, to a single group within that game, it would make sense to devote your time to the one that has had the least amount of growth and attention put on it. And to kind of iterate my point, if we spent, let's say, 2 hours-ish running around the Lanayru area, specifically to get the Zora's Domain, we'll say, and you were attempting to complete all the little quests around Zora's Domain, sure, absolutely, there are plenty of little tidbits that you can get, but it doesn't flesh out the world as much as what this one does. Because effectively, if you were to take the Zora's Domain side and put the amount of attention that the that Breath of the Wild does on the Gerudo, you would end up learning less about the Zora than you do learning about the Gerudo in this particular instance. And you can say that for virtually any other group. Sans maybe the Rito, but I don't really feel like the Rito have been given their fair shake at things as of yet. But the point I'm getting at is that each of these approaches really pushed the boundary of what Breath of the Wild was aiming for when it came to the characterization and storytelling surrounding these different groups within Hyrule. The one that needed it was the one that got it. On top of that, you end up with a large portion of Hyrule being devoted to what would be generously considered a massive sandstorm. Now, there are actually 3 of them at the time of your entry into the wasteland region. The first is directly surrounding the, the big bad evil guy. Yeah, trying to think here. Vatnaboris, there it is. It is directly surrounding Vatnaboris, taking up sand, creating a lightning storm surrounding it, preventing the player, and by extension, the Gerudo, from dealing with the plague that is Vatnaboris' threat. Cool. So we have a problem. One that could be reasonably easy to fix. Secondly, we have the one to the south end by the skeleton. And this specific one is there's really not much to go on here, but it prevents navigation to the most southern regions of all of Hyrule, or at least of this region, specifically meaning that to get from A to B, you effectively have to push even farther to make it happen, or to get from where you're aiming to go effectively. But you also have to run around blind. Most of your navigational tools, like the compass, like your map, like the mini-map, cease to work in the sandstorms, meaning you're at the mercy of the developers and their decision to make waypoints for you. The third is to the north end, just underneath the Gerudo Highlands. And this region is actually one that I think maybe doesn't need all that much attention thrown at it. But regardless of whether it needed the attention or not, I can't deny that I believe that it is important that it received that level of attention. Because every time you give something a more memorable take, something a little bit different that sets it apart from the status quo, the average run-of-the-mill regions of Hyrule, every time you do that, the game becomes that much more unique, that much more interesting, and that much more memorable. See, reality is that not every player is going to have the same fond memories of each location. This is partially due to the fact that Breath of the Wild, and by extension, all of the most major open world games don't leave as much to be leave plenty to be discovered, but at your own pace, in your own way. So I myself am an individual with the need to climb things. I am constantly chasing down the next mountaintop in games. When I played Assassin's Creed for the first time, my first goal was to climb all of the buildings. Because why not? Who cared about learning about the combat system? Who cared about trying to figure out how to make things work? No, it was the need to climb things. And I can respect that. I liked being able to climb up and make something more of each attempt than what came before it. But what else? What more could be said? Well, reality is Breath of the Wild is an open world game. And the level of detail that is crammed into Breath of the Wild might not seem like much. It's not sprawling metropolises. It's not laid out in a way that is necessarily easy to get from point A to point B. Instead, you have a massive, sprawling, open world prepared for you to explore at your leisure, going from one region to the next and saying, I could go over there. And there was always a little something hidden around every corner, every rock, every tree. Every single aspect of the world could be scrutinized, looked at with a under a microscope and said, hey, there's something more going on over here, I just don't know what yet. And that, to me, is good game design for those that are looking to find all of the secrets, who are looking for the odd tree branch out of place, for the people that are trying to find new ways to approach an old game. This generalized statement, this worldview, this design philosophy work. But there's one primary concern when it comes to building an open world game. And it's one that I may have alluded to at some point or another in the past, and if I have, I apologize for revisiting it. But the biggest issue that comes from an open world game is replayability. Now, what do you mean? It's a overall massive world. You can approach it from whatever direction and whatever way you want. And absolutely you can. Breath of the Wild, as the perfect example of this, once you beat the 4 base shrines, the Great Plateau, your tutorial zone, the world is fair game. Have at it. Enjoy. Play to your heart's content. Oh my goodness, that was very high in the air. Play to your heart's content. Enjoy. Because that's really the point of it. Enjoy the game. Go where you want to go. And so, for me, my first attempt, or my first playthrough, I went to the Rito village because I saw the massive meadow and thought, that's a place I want to go to. I have no idea what's over there, but we're going to find out. And I went straight to Rito village and immediately attempted to fight the first major boss in the game. But when I got over there and started fiddling around with what I could and could not accomplish with what I had, I ended up going backwards for a bit into central Hyrule, as far north as I could without getting into the wintry zones, as far to the east as I could, as far to the west as I could, to see what each region had to offer. Remember, I did Meadow, and then went straight to Ruda, Rudania, and then finished off with Boris before completing the last of the shrines. In this case, I had to make sure I had all 120, and then went and fought Calamity Ganon. This has just been the way I do Zelda as a whole. I gotta try to complete all of the heart containers before I go to the final boss. Thing is, with the 120 shrines, there was this feeling of I did it all. All of the major puzzles were completed, and that was that. So, I put the game down for a couple years. Enjoyed talking about it, thought that it was a fantastic game, but it was one that left me wanting more. So I picked up the game a second time, but this time following a more traditional path, straight to Ruda, Rudania, Meadow, and then Naboris. Well, okay, cool. So I went to Naboris last both times. Why is that? Well, Naboris is the hardest of the divine beasts. I wanted to call it Colossi. Sorry. But it was the hardest of the divine beasts to complete. And therefore, it's the one that I should do last when I am best prepared. And that was all good fun and games. Enjoyed it, and then thought, you know what? I could do more with this. So I went back, straight back to the drawing board, and did a 3-heart run of Breath of the Wild. Because if you want to make a game more challenging, the first thing you do is you limit your capabilities. Well, turn your character into a glass cannon. Use every tool in your toolkit and make your character a glass cannon. Beat all the divine beasts again, this time starting with Naboris, because I knew that once I beat Naboris, that was it. The rest of the challenge was effectively completed for me. So, just fought Naboris, right? One and done. And then, something weird happened as I was contemplating what to do next. And I opted, 3 hearts wasn't all that hard. I effectively kept like 3 fairies on me at all times, always kept going back to Kakariko Village to heal and prepare. Which brings me to this. My attempt at beating Breath of the Wild with the minimum weapons possible, limiting absolutely everything possible, as far as ensuring that I had the capability to complete the game. What this left me with, as far as offensive capabilities, left me with the Bomb Rune, which in and of itself really isn't all that potent, and it left me with Magnesis. Now, the Bomb Rune is by far the more consistent of the two. Because knowing that the Bomb Rune, I always had an option. Whereas, if I didn't find a random steel box or a metallic boulder somewhere, I knew I had an option to fight off opponents. But my eyes were always permanently set on, I want the giant metallic boulder. Because Magnesis, the we will rock you mentality, has always been one of the easier options, or the easier of the two options. It does significantly more damage than the bombs do. Meaning, effectively, I am so limited in terms of opportunity and options that I'm effectively left with the single weakest capability in the game to battle against these bosses, these enemies with. And so, at this point, if there was ever a run that I would do that would try to up the ante on this, I'm gonna pass up on it. I believe that I've reached a natural conclusion, the natural peak of what a challenge run of Breath of the Wild could look like. Because reality is, what's next? I don't eat food, 3-heart run, no weapons. No weapons in and of itself is already such a ludicrous idea that it's near impossible to make it that much harder without effectively making it a Mr. Perfect run, where your entire goal, start to finish, is simply not to get hurt at all. So, we're not doing Mr. Perfect. I'm not perfect. I never will be. And that's kind of the joy in this moment, in this game as a whole, as I know right now, I am in dire straits against 2 black Bokos. Now, Bokoblins aren't necessarily strong. They're not weak. But black Bokoblins, being the second strongest that you can get in the base version of Breath of the Wild, means effectively I'm just fighting up against reasonably strong opponents and showcasing that it is possible to defeat them with alternative means. But it does mean that these poor Botws are getting launched across the wasteland here, and showcasing just what kind of gymnasts they actually are. Personally, I don't think I could ever be seen doing somersaults half as glorious and, what's the word, graceful as theirs. But I digress. We're gonna find a way to make it happen. And there's the key problem that we're gonna run into. Enemies start getting smart when you hit them with a bomb too many times. They realize, at least the black, blue, etc. Bokos, moblins, etc. begin to avoid bombs like the plague, going around it at wide berth so as to prevent themselves from getting knocked into the sky with it. This is twofold, because they also avoid getting knocked into the water by bombs and whatnot, by simply avoiding bombs in general. And for some enemies, although it is a little bit more of a rarity, the enemy will actually try to knock the bomb out of your hand to prevent you from using explosives against them. Now, I personally think that this is kind of ridiculous, but nonetheless somewhat effective. By shooting or knocking the bomb out of your hand, they're effectively doing damage to you, for one, and for two, they are doing so in such a way that they're reducing risk and harm to themselves at the same time. Anywho, the point I'm getting at with this is Breath of the Wild, you can go as many ways as you want. You can play the game endlessly and showcase just what you as a player are actually capable of. You can go through Hyrule 17 different times and each time go a slightly different path. Same as you can do with Skyrim, same as you can do with Morrowind or Oblivion. Same as what is expected of you in games like Assassin's Creed, where it is primarily a story, but your choice and option of going from point A to point B isn't necessarily limited. This is an important facet of the game, in my opinion. Open world is designed around the player being able to approach their problem in whatever way they see fit. I'm just going to take that. Oh my goodness, that's the first time I've held two weapons at the same time. Held, not used. To clarify, using a weapon is swinging it, is throwing it, is attacking with it. And so swinging a weapon at a rope to rip the rope so as to just drop something is using a weapon. But holding onto one to prevent enemies from getting them, that's not using it. That's just keeping your options and keeping your enemies at bay. That's the word. By effectively holding their hands. That's how I'm going to word it. So we're just going to talk to this guy here because he's got something wonderful. Was his name Dilly? Yes, it is Dilly. I don't know what to think of that. Anywho, Dilly here wants to go to Gerudo Town, and I don't need to gesture vaguely at Ocarina of Time to tell you why that's a bad idea. Anywho, back to the Molduga. Molduga is actually one of the enemies that made their debut in Breath of the Wild. And I'll be honest, it's one of the enemies that I think gets a bit of a bad rap, and it's one that I think gets more credit than it deserves. So, to clarify, Moldugas are absolutely, unabashedly some of the most powerful enemies in all of Zelda canon. As far as it goes, the only enemies that I believe could truly hold their own against a Molduga would be either a Phrox or a Lynel, with the exception of Ganon himself. Now, Molduga are effectively giant sand-based monsters, similar to whales and or sharks, depending on which you would prefer, or even more similar to giant tadpoles, or even if you want to go the route of calling it a gator of some variety, I wouldn't fault you. Each of these identifiers showcases something different about how they function, how they look, how they act. And I'll be honest, whenever I fight them, I'm always reminded of the Dune franchise. Just a giant sandworm that's gonna come and, eat an entire continent. Anywho. So that's all well and good. And, yeah. Perfect. 2 torches down. I had to, you'll notice that there was a break after the last shrine, where I launched myself to roughly Gerudo Town. And the point of that was actually very simple. I sent myself across the world to Death Mountain to drop some blue chew jelly so as to turn it red, so that when I hit the red chew jelly with a bomb, I'd be able to light the torches. Now, ordinarily, this is about as far as that problem would naturally get. But I digress, that's pretty much it. Now, one of the problems that I'm going to be running into soon is that I'm also running out of regions to check for shrines. We've gotten about 60, 70 of them at this point. And truth be told, it's actually more than I was bargaining for, to actually get to. But I want to see just how far that limit goes. And part of the challenges that I still need to figure out is whether or not I can get to see whether I can get the Hateno Ancient Tech Lab fixed. Because if I can get the Ancient Tech Lab fixed, then theoretically I can also get the oh geez, what's it called? The Remote Bombs Plus, and by extension, because we gotta be very careful with this, I could also get the Camera Rune. The Camera Rune will unlock some more side stories, some more side missions, and by extension to these side missions will also unlock more shrines that can be completed simply because I have done other shrines. So that is something that we're going to be looking into in the near future here. But for now, with everything said and done, the final shrine of today is officially unlocked. Sorry. Molduga here is just struggling something terrible. But I don't really think that I want to try my luck against it. Or the Stal monsters. Oh, hi Molduga. Cool. So, what? Oh, his beard thing's in the way. Alright. We'll just do damage to him until I can actually get into the shrine itself. Thank you very much. And come on, get out of the way. Alright. I don't think I need to say why that didn't go horribly. Anyways, with all of this said and done, if you like what you see, have a curiosity, a question, fire it away in the comments below. While you're down there, leave a like and possibly a subscribe. I'd love to see it. Until next time, I hope you all have a good one.